This is the Energy Makers Show, featuring the innovators, financiers, and policymakers focused on the global energy demand. Brought to you by NRG, moving clean energy forward. And here's your host, Paul Dickerson.
Welcome to another episode of the Energy Makers Show. First up today, Joey Romano, president of Adaptive Container Company. This company turning shipping containers into workable environments off the grid. Next up, Greg Casey, CEO of the Texas Energy Network, providing enhanced digital communications to remote upstream oil and gas companies. All that right after this.
This is the Energy Makers Show, brought to you by NRG, moving clean energy forward. And now, back to the Energy Makers Show with your host, Paul Dickerson.
Welcome to another episode of the Energy Makers Show. We have with us today Joey Romano, president of Adaptive Container. Joey, great to have you on the program.
Paul, thanks for having me on today.
All right, so tell me about the company.
Well, we started when we built a sales office for an apartment project I'm developing called the Mirabeau B at Hyde Park. We wanted something that was, more in line with what the project was going to look like, something that walked the walk, not like the glossy ads that you see with people sipping wine. We wanted something that was representative of what this project was going to be. So we came together and built our first prototype, which was a 10-panel grid-tied system that was going to serve as the construction office, the sales office. People typically associate these sorts of buildings as grungy, containers of sorts. But with this one, we wanted it to feel like you were not walking into a shipping container. Something that was nice, but that was also producing power and sending power back into the grid. As a representation of kind of what we were going to be doing with the building project. So we partnered with a communications firm called Tweak, who introduced us to an architecture firm called MetaLab, and together built this first prototype of sorts. It's a 8-foot by 20-foot upcycled shipping container that we finished the interior much like an office, but the real invention is a racking system that maximizes the solar production and includes battery backup for 5 to 7 days. So in a nutshell, it's a mobile solar generator and workspace where the panels can fold for transportation. So we wanted to maintain the flexibility and strength of a shipping container, but allow it to have this solar application where for both in stateside and in developing countries where the reliable power might not be there, this could be an option that's both cost effective and viable as sort of an office.
And are these new containers, used containers?
We typically use single-use containers that come into the country with goods, but they're basically brand new containers. They come to our fabrication facility where we try to do minor modifications.
All right, so what are some of the uses of these containers?
Well, we see that pretty broadly, but there are specific applications sort of within that broad range. We think healthcare is a big one, especially overseas. Disaster relief. In Houston we have hurricanes, we have power outages. This is a great way to have mobile power when people need to charge their cell phones, keep their medicine cold. Park offices, any place where you need mobile remote power, where pulling power to it is either going to be too expensive or just logistically a nightmare. So we see it as construction offices as well. But the big thing is where there's a need versus where there's a want. Looking at where this power is valuable and where it starts to make sense, dollars and cents.
All right, so and what's the cost?
It's about $65,000 on the market right now for a 3.5 kilowatt system with 5 days of battery backup and a fully finished interior with heating, cooling, lighting, glass storefront, insulation, power outlets,
Right.
generator input. So it's a pretty robust kind of turnkey package that delivered. It's about 20 minutes to open the panels, all the wiring's in place, and you're up and running. With 3.5 kilowatts of solar power on an 8-foot by 20-foot footprint.
And you manufacture here?
Yeah, everything is built here. We've been using Sharp 224 solar panels, which are made in Memphis. And then all of the other labor that goes into just building out the interiors, it's all Houston-based. And, we want to keep it that way and pretty proud of that.
What's the turnaround time?
It's about 6 to 8 weeks.
And what's your vision for the company?
Well, it's interesting where we started thinking of it much like that first application of marketing centers for other developers looking at lead projects. And I think what we've come away after 2.5 years, 3 years of talking to a lot of people, kind of really getting off the ground as a company as opposed to just a project, looking for places where there's really a need versus a want. And so that sort of, goes to looking not just in our backyard, but looking around the globe.
Sure.
So we've set up distribution for Africa, where there's a critical need for power on both the energy side, the health side, where this really does make sense and adds a lot of value to communities that would not have this reliable power kind of at their hands for and at the price when you factor in shipping diesel and protecting that diesel as it ships and
Sure.
and whatnot. This pays for itself pretty quickly. And, it just sends a sort of a nice message when you see it on the ground. It's got a great visual presence and is something I think that, is iconic to a sense. So our architects totally knocked it out of the park on that front.
Well, Joey, it's a great story. Thank you so much for coming by today.
Thanks, Paul. I appreciate it.
And that concludes our discussion with Joey Romano. We'll be back with more right after this.
Where will the energy come from to move us forward? From natural sources in abundant supply? Or perhaps a man-made source? At NRG, we believe innovation will solve our energy needs. That's why NRG is moving away from fossil fuels towards wind, solar, and other sustainable technologies to power the smart grid, the electric car, and our clean energy future. We're using all of our energy to develop more of it.
This is the Energy Makers Show, brought to you by NRG, moving clean energy forward. And now, back to the Energy Makers Show with your host, Paul Dickerson.
Welcome back to the Energy Makers Show. My guest now, Greg Casey, CEO of the Texas Energy Network. Greg, great to have you on the program.
Great to be here, Paul.
So tell us about the Texas Energy Network.
Sure. Texas Energy Network is bringing broadband to the oil fields of Texas. And then on to the rest of the world. Right now, if you go out in the middle of an oil field, you cannot get internet access to any degree that's workable for upstream oil and gas. So what we've done is go out and start building 4G LTE towers out in the middle of nowhere, really, and start supplying broadband access services to the oil and gas industry.
Well, and explain that to our viewers. When they're out in West Texas or parts of the state, what is out there?
Well, currently there's really nothing other than satellite service, and some of the oil companies have put together some of their own networks. They're partial and incomplete solutions for what they need for broadband access, or they use satellite. Right. And the problem with satellite is it's 20,000 miles up and 20,000 miles down. If you've ever tried to make a phone call over a satellite, it's horrible. Sure. There's clipping delay. Internet access is slow. And then when all the guys out in the oil field are trying to use the satellite, there's a lot of network contention. And so it slows everything down, and it's very frustrating for the company men that are out there working in the oil field. We devised a solution that provides high-speed internet access, much like you have at home. We've put together a combination of 4G LTE, the very same 4G LTE that you've heard from Verizon, our own patented CPE, and then very importantly, a licensed spectrum, which creates a non-interfering sort of platform for the oil and gas industry to provide data back and forth from the oil field.
Well, let's talk about the CPE. How is yours different?
RCP is different because what it does is provide both a Wi-Fi hotspot, so anybody driving up in a truck can access the internet at a high speed,
right.
Driving up to one of our units, say at a rig, at a pump, at a tank battery, anywhere one of our units are. And then also it allows the oil and gas companies, the upstream oil and gas companies, right. to access it, the data files that are necessary for the operations of the rigs, for the exploration, for the production, to know really in real time what's going on that oil field, which is absolutely critical to a profitable operation out in the oil field.
And how is your spectrum different?
Our spectrum is different because it's very, the FCC has actually called our spectrum the beachfront of spectrum.
Right.
We use 700 megahertz. It propagates very far, 18 miles at the radius. So from our cell tower to 18 miles out, you can get at least a megabit of traffic speed. And in total, if you do the math, it covers about 1,000 square miles. Which is huge and perfect for West Texas. You know, in West Texas, they say if your dog runs away, you can watch him run away for about 3 days. And it's the perfect technology for West Texas and for the upstream oil and gas industry.
Now, we love startups here. Can you tell us a little bit about the company's progression?
Sure. I had the idea about 2 years ago. I went out to the oil field to see what was out there. And what I discovered was it was just a dog's breakfast of telecommunications solutions. And so I endeavored to put together a solution for them that would create huge access fields for the oil and gas industry so that they could harvest the data that's coming off. You know, the Cambridge Energy Research Associates that were just here last week say that oil and gas companies save 25% if they operate digitally. So we put that together using a combination of 4G LTE, licensed spectrum, and patent pending CPE.
Right.
We now have a number of upstream oil and gas companies on our network since last February, and more are coming on as we speak.
Now, you're CEO of the Texas Energy Network. Will
Yes.
there be a North Dakota Energy Network, a Pennsylvania Energy Network?
Well, you know, I thought about worldwide energy network, but that's when, and I don't think that that's not a good idea. So yes, absolutely. If this solution works here, it'll work everywhere, and we're looking to expand everywhere that we logically can.
Well, congratulations on the success.
Thank you so much.
Greg, thank you so much for coming in today.
Okay.
And that concludes this episode of the Energy Makers Show, heard on the radio nationwide and seen right here at TheEnergyMakers.com. I'm Paul Dickerson, and we'll see you next week.